Welcome to Magnificat TV News, dedicated to providing news of the Church. It is Wednesday, March 23, 2022. The Pope has issued an apostolic constitution reforming the functioning of the Roman Curia. Most notably, lay people will be able to preside over dicasteries. On the 25th, the Pope, together with bishops from all over the world, will consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary to ask for the end of the war. The bishops of Chile have called on Catholics to vote against the new constitution for including abortion as a human right. Cardinal Pell has asked the Doctrine of the Faith to warn two bishops for their statements in favor of homosexuality. Polish nuns have placed their convents at the service of refugees arriving from Ukraine, and thousands have found a temporary home there. The Vatican has a new system of operation. Among the most striking changes is the possibility that a layperson might preside over a dicastery.
Pope Francis has promulgated the new constitution Magnificat Evangelium, which reforms the Roman Curia and will come into force on June 5th, thus revoking the pastor bonus promulgated by St. John Paul II in 1988. Magnificat Evangelium has 250 articles describing the competencies of the 16 dicasteries and other Vatican institutions, including judicial bodies such as the Apostolic Penitentiary, economic organizations such as the Secretariat for the Economy, and other offices such as the Prefecture of the Pontifical Household. The new constitution provides for the merger of some agencies. The Pontifical Council for the New Evangelization and the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples are merged into the Dicastery for Evangelization, which will be presided over directly by the Pope. Likewise, the Pontifical Council for Culture and the Congregation for Catholic Education are merged into the Dicastery for Culture and Education. The role of the Secretariat of State is not substantially altered. Among the changes reflected in the new constitution are the creation of the Dicastery for the Service of Integral Human Development, which brings together the social issues of the Church, and the Secretariat for the Economy, which will manage all Vatican finances, including the funds of the Secretariat of State. In addition, a specific dicastery has been instituted for the service of charity, which until now was the Apostolic Charity. It is also established that any member of the faithful can preside over a dicastery or an organism, taking into account their particular competence, power of government, and function. In fact, in several dicasteries, such as that of the laity and family, there are already lay people occupying these positions of government.
The Pope has decided to consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, to pray for the end of war. It will take place on the 25th, the Solemnity of the Incarnation.
Pope Francis will consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on Friday, March 25th, during a penitential celebration in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. At the same time, this congregation will take place in Fatima by Cardinal Kowalski. Bishops from all over the world will join in. On March 2nd, in a letter to the Pope, the Ukrainian bishops begged the Pope, "In these hours of immeasurable pain and terrible ordeal for our people, to make this consecration as the Blessed Virgin Mary asked in Fatima." In the apparition of July 13, 1917 at Fatima, Our Lady had asked for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart, stating that if this request was not answered, Russia would spread its errors throughout the world, promoting wars and persecutions of the Church. The good, she added, will be martyred, the Holy Father will have much to suffer, various nations will be destroyed. After the apparitions of Fatima, there were several acts of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, but it was not until 1984 that St. John Paul II made that consecration in a way that was considered valid by Sister Lucia, the seer of Fatima, who was still alive. However, it did not explicitly mention Russia.
The bishops of Chile have publicly opposed the draft of the new constitution for including abortion as a right.
The Standing Committee of the Episcopal Conference of Chile has released a statement regarding the approval of abortion as a right by the Constitutional Convention. The plenary of the Chilean Constitutional Convention, the body in charge of drafting the country's new Magna Carta, has approved the article on sexual and reproductive rights that recognizes abortion and the imposition of gender ideology. If Chileans vote in favor of this constitution, Chile will become one of the most pro-abortion and pro-LGBTI countries in the world. The bishops assure that consecrating abortion as a constitutional right is a very serious attack on the dignity of the human person and will prevent its regulation so that children can be aborted just before birth. The bishops thank those in the convention who have opposed the measure, but note that a mentality contrary to the life of the already conceived person has been imposing itself in the country. If this decision is not changed, the bishops say, the Constitutional Convention places an insurmountable obstacle for many citizens to give their approval to the constitutional text that is being elaborated. The bishops do not speak in their statement of the imposition of gender ideology, which is also included in the articles of the future constitution.
Cardinal Pell has asked the Doctrine of the Faith to publicly correct two bishops who have supported the legalization of homosexuality.
Cardinal George Pell has asked the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith to publicly rebuke two of Europe's most prominent bishops for what he says is a total and explicit rejection of the Church's teaching on sexual morality. In a statement released on March 15th, Cardinal Pell asked the Vatican's doctrinal dicastery to intervene and pass judgment on the statements of Cardinal Hollerich, General Speaker of the Synod on Synodality, and Bishop Batzing, President of the German Bishops' Conference. Jesuit Cardinal Hollerich of Luxembourg and Bishop Batzing of Limburg have called in recent interviews for a change in the Church's teaching on homosexuality so that its practice would be considered valid. Cardinal Hollerich stated last month that the current teaching was erroneous and that the sociological scientific foundation of that teaching, on which it was previously condemned as sodomy, was no longer correct. Bishop Batzing argued that same-sex relations were permissible and did not constitute a sin, and that the Catechism should be partially amended to reflect this. Cardinal Pell said that this teaching was erroneous because it not only rejects the ancient Judeo-Christian doctrines against homosexual activity, but it undermines and rejects the teaching on monogamous marriage, the exclusive union of one man and one woman.
The Catholic Church in Poland, and especially the nuns, have put themselves at the service of the Ukrainian refugees. Thousands have found shelter in their convents.
Since the beginning of the war, each of the nearly 150 congregations of nuns operating in Poland and Ukraine has helped tens of thousands of refugees fleeing Ukraine. In 924 convents in Poland and 98 in Ukraine, the sisters are providing spiritual, psychological, medical, and material aid, says a statement issued by the Council of Major Superiors of Congregations of Religious Sisters in Poland. Accommodation has been arranged in 498 convents in Poland and 76 in Ukraine. So far, 3,060 children, 2,420 families, and 2,950 adults have been accommodated. In 64 institutions, there are 600 places for orphans, and in 420 institutions, there are 3,000 places for mothers with children. Since the outbreak of the war, the nuns have been involved in the preparation and distribution of hot meals, sanitary products, clothes, and blankets. They help transport people from the affected places, look for jobs for them, help Ukrainian children to enter Polish schools, serve as translators of the Ukrainian language. Elderly and disabled people can also find shelter in their institutions. In Poland, religious communities constantly collect food and hygiene products that are sent to Ukraine, delivered to refugees, or to houses run by congregations where war victims are helped. The congregations also have financial donations and pass on funds through their foundations.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to commenting on the consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart, scheduled on the 25th.
In 1917, in a lost, remote village of Portugal in Fatima, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to 3 children, 3 teenagers who were tending a flock. These are the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima. These apparitions lasted from May 13th to October 13th of that year. On July 13th, the Virgin Mary told the shepherds that they should ask the Pope to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart. At that time, the First World War was going on, then known as the Great War, because logically the Second World War had not yet happened. It is difficult for the 3 little shepherds of Fatima to have heard about the war. Well, it is not impossible. It is much more difficult for them to have heard about Russia, a village, I repeat, lost in the center of Portugal. But it is not impossible either. But it is certainly impossible that in the month of July of 1917, they knew what was going to happen on October 25th of that same year, because at that time no one knew. And on October 25th, November 7th, according to our calendar, October 25th, according to the calendar used in the eastern part of Europe, on that October 25th took place the seizure of power in Russia, the capture of the Tsar, and later his assassination by the communists, and Russia became the Soviet Union. Impossible that in July the children knew what was going to happen in November, October, November. Impossible. And yet, Our Lady, the Blessed Virgin Mary, told them that it was essential to consecrate Russia. I insist, perhaps they had never even heard of Russia, to her Immaculate Heart, because otherwise Russia would spread its errors throughout the world. The Soviet Union did not yet exist. Russia was not yet communist. Russia would spread its errors throughout the world, would cause thousands of deaths. The destruction of entire countries would make the Church suffer and would even endanger the Pope himself. That is a prophecy, and that was fulfilled. At the beginning, the Pope did not pay much attention, but as the Soviet Union became the danger announced by Our Lady, as communism was demonstrating its cruelty, to that extent, they began to worry and to say, let's see if it's going to be true that about the apparitions of Fatima. And they began to make, with great delicacy, the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart, with great delicacy, so as not to offend the Soviets. Until St. John Paul II in 1984, together with the bishops of the whole world, made that consecration, but even then he did it without implicitly naming Russia, but only by allusions. This consecration was validated by Sister Lucia, the only one still alive of those 3 little shepherds who had received the revelations, the apparitions of the Virgin Mary. That consecration resulted in the fall of the Berlin Wall 5 years later, which was the beginning of the end of the empire and of the Soviet tyranny. Now, in the context of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the bombings to the cities, the slaughter of innocents, the Catholic bishops of the Latin Rite of Ukraine have asked the Pope to consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and the Pope has, fortunately, in a gesture that honors him, accepted. The consecration will take place on March 25th, and many bishops have already announced that they will join the Pope at that time. Many bishops. The Pope has also sent a cardinal of Polish origin to Fatima on his behalf, so that while he's in Rome, he will do the consecration there. I believe that this is a great step forward, which certainly comes late, but we must be grateful for it, support it to the maximum, and we must join in this consecration that the Pope and the bishops are going to do on this coming March 25th. It is a historical anecdote that when Europe was being divided up after the war, several Catholic countries in Eastern Europe came under communist domination, and Churchill, the English leader, asked what the Pope would think of all this, to which Stalin, the tyrant, murderer, communist, replied, "How many tank divisions does the Pope have?" Well, he laughed at the Pope and kept countries like Poland or Hungary, Czechoslovakia, in short, because the Pope had no tank divisions to prevent it. But we have something stronger than tank divisions. We have the power of prayer, and so it was prayer, of course, along with other things, but it was prayer and the consecration of St. John Paul II that brought down what tanks could not bring down: the Berlin Wall, the dreadful empire of the Soviets. Prayer is our best weapon, and I think it is excellent that it is consecrated again, and that it is consecrated well, citing Russia and Ukraine by name to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. But it is not enough. A consecration is not only the recitation of a prayer. It would be too easy. Our Lady of Fatima spoke. She asked that there be conversion and penance. Without this conversion, the consecration is simply a good wish. Even if it has its value, conversion is necessary. Ukraine is the country in Europe, and perhaps the country in the world, where there are more surrogacy clinics. Clinics where women are impregnated, paying them money to have children for someone else. There are many of them. The government supports them as long as foreign currency enters there. It is forbidden in many countries, not in Ukraine. Surrogacy is a successful business until the war broke out. In Ukraine, abortion is totally allowed up to 3 months without any reason Up to 3 months is valid, and up to 7 months is valid with very few exceptions. Moreover, President Zelensky, who is seen as a hero in Western Europe, is a totally convinced abortionist, and although the legislation of his country is very permissive up to 7 months, he says that it is not enough and that it should be extended even more. In Ukraine, the gender ideology is implanted. The bishops, the Greek Catholic bishops in this case, have already denounced it and have protested against it, of course without having any success in their protest. Consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Great news to support, but conversion is necessary. The war that is martyring Ukraine is inhuman. It is appalling. But we must not forget the innocent deaths that fall every day at the hands of abortion in that same country, because the law allows it. I insist, one of the most permissive in the world, and they still want to extend it even more. Consecration with conversion. Otherwise, there will be no peace. As long as there are murderous laws against the innocent, maybe airplanes will not bring down buildings. Let's hope so. We believe that God has the power to stop the war and that our prayers are heard. But there are other wars, there are other crimes, there are other innocents killed. So, consecration, yes. Let us join the Pope in the consecration, yes. But let us pray that together with this consecration there be a conversion of hearts, and that the Ukraine that emerges from this catastrophe be a much more human Ukraine, where the lives of all the innocent are protected, safeguarded. Until next week, God willing.
If you would like to keep up to date with what is happening in the church, you can visit our news page, www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.